What if everyone had a free basic income? Imagine a world where every individual, regardless of employment, age, or background, receives a guaranteed sum of money each month. Enough to cover the most basic necessities, like food, shelter, and perhaps a modest portion for other needs. This concept, commonly referred to as universal basic income, or UBI, has been debated from ancient philosophers to modern economists. Let's embark on a journey to explore, in depth, what might happen if everyone in society were suddenly granted a free basic income. To understand the implications of such a radical shift, we must first consider human behavior and motivation. Imagine waking up each morning free from the ever-present dread of bills looming overhead or the gnawing uncertainty of whether this month's paycheck will cover groceries and rent. For millions around the globe, financial insecurity is a persistent shadow, dictating choices and limiting ambitions. But what happens if that shadow is lifted? In practical terms, the immediate aftermath would see a reduction in poverty levels. For many households, especially those living paycheck to paycheck, the injection of regular, unconditional income could spell the end of dire stress. Patterns of spending would likely shift. Instead of agonizing over rent or skipping meals to pay utilities, families might have the breathing room to purchase healthier food, perhaps invest in personal or professional development, or simply save for future uncertainties. For children in these homes, the changes could be even more profound. No longer forced to forgo educational opportunities or extracurricular activities due to cost, children might flourish in ways previously impossible. The pressure for teenagers to abandon schooling in favor of work could ease, allowing them to pursue higher education or vocational training. Over time, the educational landscape could shift as academic performance and attendance improve among the most vulnerable populations. Thinking even further, let's examine the way we perceive work. Currently, employment is a necessity, the linchpin that holds the fabric of daily life together for most people. But if basic needs are met regardless of work status, the compulsion to accept toxic or demeaning jobs purely for survival might diminish. Employees would be empowered to leave exploitative environments, negotiate better conditions, or seek roles that match their skill sets and aspirations. The bargaining power dynamic could tilt, even if slightly, toward workers, altering labor markets in unforeseen ways. Of course, such shifts could have ripple effects across the economy. With more financial security at their backs, some people would take the opportunity to retrain, re-enter education, or even pursue entrepreneurial ventures. For aspiring artists, musicians, writers, innovators, and tinkerers, UBI might provide the safety net needed to explore passions and create without fear of destitution. We might see a flourishing of creativity, invention, and productivity in sectors often neglected in a world where only profit-centric work is rewarded. On the flip side, a pressing question emerges. Would people continue to work, especially in necessary but less glamorous jobs, if they did not have to? While some argue that a basic income could erode motivation, real-world experiments and pilot programs suggest otherwise. Work, for many, does not merely represent income. It is a source of identity, social interaction, and purpose. Most evidence indicates that while some people might reduce work hours to care for family or study, few would quit entirely. In fact, job satisfaction and well-being may improve as people have genuine freedom to choose their path. Let's not forget the implications for societal structure and public health. Relieved of relentless financial anxiety, many could experience better physical and mental health. Rates of depression, chronic stress, and preventable illnesses might decline, alleviating some burdens on healthcare systems. The sense of overall well-being and life satisfaction could rise, potentially leading to a kinder, more cooperative society. For the economy at large, the picture is complex. Injecting a basic income into millions of pockets would stimulate demand for goods and services. Neighborhood shops might see an uptick in business. Entrepreneurs would have an easier time finding customers as consumers enjoy more disposable income for small luxuries or household improvements. Local economies might especially benefit in communities previously plagued by high unemployment or entrenched poverty. However, financing a universal basic income presents a monumental challenge, and the FAS would depend greatly on the specifics of its implementation. Would it be funded by higher taxes, cuts to existing welfare programs, wealth redistribution, or perhaps even taxes on automation and artificial intelligence? Each funding strategy brings its own trade-offs. To sustain such a program, governments would need to strike a careful balance, ensuring the basic income doesn't trigger runaway inflation or undermine the willingness to work while maintaining social cohesion. Inflation itself is a crucial consideration. If every citizen receives new money, might prices simply adjust upward, leaving the poorest no better off? Some economists argue that a moderate basic income, when carefully calibrated, need not provoke significant inflation if production keeps pace with demand. Others caution that without careful oversight, costs for essential goods and housing could rise, potentially undoing the benefits for those it's meant to help. Turning our attention to government roles, a universal basic income could transform the way social welfare is administered. Rather than a patchwork of complex, means-tested programs laden with bureaucracy and stigma, basic income would streamline support, treating every citizen equally. This could reduce administrative costs and eliminate invasive eligibility checks. Yet, critics worry that dismantling targeted benefits might leave those with higher needs, such as the elderly, disabled, or chronically ill, worse off unless supplemented by dedicated support. The philosophical implications are just as compelling. A world with basic income asks us to reconsider long-held beliefs about merit, deservedness, and community obligation. What does it mean for fairness if everyone receives the same regardless of effort or circumstance? Does it foster a sense of solidarity, encouraging us to look out for one another? Or would it sow resentment among those who equate worth with traditional labor? It's instructive to examine pilot programs and historical experiments for clues. In Finland, a 2-year UBI trial for unemployed individuals saw participants experience greater life satisfaction and mental well-being, with only modest effects on employment. In Manitoba, Canada, a 1970s experiment called Mincome provided every resident of Dauphin a guaranteed income. Hospitalizations for mental health and accidents dropped, school performance improved, and employment rates fell only slightly among new mothers and teenagers, suggesting people use the freedom to care for infants or continue education. Another lens to consider is the shifting technological landscape. As automation and AI render some forms of work obsolete, entire sectors brace for upheaval. UBI offers a cushion, granting flexibility as societies adjust to new realities. Rather than punishing those displaced by innovation, it provides a bridge to the jobs that will emerge, encouraging reskilling and lifelong learning. Global impact is another facet worthy of exploration. In low-income nations, even modest basic incomes could be transformative. By meeting bare necessities, basic income could break cycles of extreme poverty, improve nutrition and school attendance, and empower marginalized groups such as women and minorities to participate more fully in economic, civic, and social life. Yet, challenges abound. In places without robust institutions, basic income could face corruption or misallocation. Balancing the diversity of needs across regions and demographics would require flexibility and ongoing evaluation. Environmentally, basic income might even play an unexpected role. With the pressure to accept any job reduced, people might choose work closer to home, reducing commuting and carbon emissions. Individuals could invest time in sustainable practices, community projects, or conservation activities. Alternatively, if consumption spikes dramatically, resource use could increase, underscoring the need for environmental policies to complement economic innovation. One of the most thought-provoking questions is how free time would be used, once survival is no longer an all-consuming worry. History offers clues. Throughout periods of prosperity and leisure, humans have devoted themselves to art, science, volunteerism, and civic engagement. Freed from the relentless demands of making ends meet, society could experience a flowering of human potential. More painters, poets, engineers, mentors, and caregivers. Nevertheless, some caution is warranted. Unstructured time can be a blessing or a curse. While some would seize it for growth, others might experience boredom or isolation, underscoring the need for robust community, educational, and recreational opportunities. Cultural adjustment would take time, as norms around work and purpose evolve. Diving into the realm of personal relationships, imagine families who can now afford to spend more quality time together, rather than juggling multiple jobs across odd hours. Parents could dedicate time to nurturing children, building strong emotional bonds, and supporting learning. Older adults, freed from the terror of retirement without security, might pursue mentoring roles, community service, or lifelong passions. Communities, too, might grow stronger. When individuals aren't pitted in relentless competition for basic needs, they are freer to collaborate, volunteer, and support neighbors. Rates of crime, often correlated with deprivation, could fall. Social cohesion and mutual trust could rise, breeding a sense of collective responsibility. Yet, it is essential not to romanticize. Not every challenge would vanish overnight. Rooted issues like addiction, mental health struggles, or systemic discrimination would persist, requiring continued targeted support and policy innovation. Expanding our lens to global markets and international relations, the shift to basic income in one country could create migration incentives. Economic stability might reduce outward migration from impoverished regions, but increase pressure on wealthier nations to extend similar benefits to newcomers. International cooperation and dialogue would be vital to ensure stability and fairness. Over time, as more societies experiment with and refine basic income models, a patchwork of systems may emerge, tailored to unique national contexts and economic structures. Lessons learned could fuel continuous improvement, steering humanity closer to a world where no one need live in fear of destitution. Stepping back, it's worth reflecting on the long-term philosophical and evolutionary impact. If human civilization is measured by its ability to free individuals from drudgery and unlock creativity, universal basic income might prove a pivotal milestone. A world where all share in basic abundance could foster a deeper sense of interconnectedness, imagining prosperity not as a zero-sum game, but as a shared project. Stories told 100 years from now might look back on the adoption of basic income as a turning point, the moment when survival became a fundamental right rather than a privilege reserved for the lucky or well-connected. Such a society might witness not only an alleviation of poverty and stress, but also the unleashing of extraordinary new talent and compassion. With basic needs covered, humanity might redirect its collective efforts from mere survival to progress, stewardship, and wonder. Yet, the path to adopting universal basic income remains fraught with debate. Critics raise valid concerns about cost, inflation, and human motivation. Proponents paint a picture of liberated potential and newfound security. The truth likely lies in the messy, imperfect middle, a terrain that demands experimentation, careful monitoring, and willingness to adapt. Even if universal basic income is not a panacea, the conversation it sparks helps us reimagine what a fair, prosperous society could look like. It pushes us to confront fundamental questions. What do we owe one another, simply by virtue of sharing the same sky? How can we best ensure that every person has a chance, not just to survive, but to thrive? Is progress measured by GDP or by the well-being and freedom of its people? As we walk the mental corridors of this imagined world, the future hinges not only on economics, but on imagination, empathy, and the courage to try new solutions. What if the most valuable resource in the world is not gold or oil, but the unleashing of human ingenuity, creativity, and compassion, untethered from the shackles of anxiety and deprivation? Universal basic income, for all its challenges, dares us to believe that such a world is possible, and that together we might chart a course toward it. Thank you for watching the video. What do you think about today's topic? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and share the video to support the channel. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.